Hello, my name is Madison Franca, and I will be doing a book review on The Hatfields and McCoys by Otis K. Rice. It was published officially in 1982, and it is about the Hatfield and McCoy feud. It's more of a biography, however, there is some dialogue included that is utilized from public documents and court records. The Hatfield and McCoy feud, which this is based on what the book tells, is a famous part of Appalachian history. But over the years, myths and errors and misconceptions and different embellishments from different writers has led to the feud to become obscured from the real story. I've seen it happen firsthand. Writers and filmmakers have often blurred the lines between fact and fiction, heightening the drama of the events. And there was really no reason for this because the actual truthful events are truly tragic. There was no reason for it to be exaggerated. So, building on this confusion from the myths and errors, fact or fiction, Otis K. Rice, he relies on court records, public documents, official letters, and other sources to tell the story as accurately as possible. He carefully examines the evidence and he refrains from taking sides or speaking down to those involved, which I personally liked because it makes it to where it's not biased. You don't feel either or about the Hatfields or the McCoys. So by doing so, Rice really sets his work apart from many others about the feud. Like I've said, I've seen in my personal experience, I've watched different series and movies and documentaries, and this was the first time that I truly had some clarity on the topic. Rice also looks at social, political, economic, and cultural background of Eastern Kentucky and Southwestern West Virginia in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. He explains the feud by considering the impact of the Civil War, weak churches and schools, and strong family ties. And he also talks about the lawlessness. You can really see the lawlessness that was in this area in America because it had gotten so bad to the point where it had to be taken to the Supreme Court. So overall, the Hatfield and McCoy feud, it's the biggest part of Appalachian history, at least in my opinion. And he does a really good job of keeping it as accurate as possible and giving different sources that back it up. So, with that being said, I wanted to preface by saying I read this entire book cover to cover, every word on every page. So, would I recommend it? And what do I like about it and what do I not like about it? I like that he uses public records and court documents to back up his case. And that he makes it clear on whether different statements he makes is alleged or rumored. He's very good about clarifying this was alleged, or it's rumored that, or there's multiple stories. So he also gives multiple sides to the same story and provides a preface that not everything included in his book may be true. Overall, he goes out of his way to make sure that he is clear and concise and truthful in his statements, and he utilizes faithful sources. And I also liked how he started from square one and built upon that. So the beginning of the story starts with, as most people may know, you stole my hog. And it just goes on from there, leading to the massacre of 1888 on New Year's. So overall, he goes out of his way to make sure that he's clear and concise and truthful. And now, one aspect of the book that I didn't quite care for was the rambling of names. There were different times where he was just spatting off names and so and so and so and so, and it got really confusing. It would have been nice to be able to have clarity on whether he was speaking on a Hatfield or McCoy. He did say the last names Hatfield and McCoy, but it would usually take until he finished like a whole paragraph before he would fully like clarify, like, this is a Hatfield or this is a McCoy. And that part kind of threw me off a little. So it had a hard time for me. I had a hard time being able to formulate my own opinion on what he's saying because I don't know if he's talking about a Hatfield or a McCoy. So I wish he had gone into detail also on the significance of people who were not a Hatfield or a McCoy, but they are important to the history. So I wish he had given more detail of their significance rather than simply stating what their job was, what they have said or done in regards to the feud, and what they have said or done in regards to the feud. Sorry. So that was one aspect that I didn't really quite care for. Was yeah, that's really it really threw me off. So would I recommend this book? I would overall recommend this book. I think it is also a great tool for students, and I think that different passages from this book would benefit students greatly on learning about this feud or just the impacts of the Civil War in general. The book represents great animosity between Unions and Confederates, which this is actually one aspect that shocked me about the Hatfields and McCoys. I had no idea that the McCoys were alleged to be Unions, and that the Hatfields were alleged to be Confederates. And he actually gave some background into the Hatfields, that a lot of them fought in the militia for the Confederacy on that side. So I never realized, I knew that it was post-Civil War and that there was tension because of the Civil War, but I never realized that that is something that could have potentially started the feud. And I do like that he does his best to pinpoint what exactly started the feud, because there is no true answer as to what actually started the feud. But he was able to give different alleged reasonings. The top contender that most people, as I said before, is, the Hatfield stealing a McCoy's hog. That's the top contender, and he went into great detail about the court case for that, and that's what most people think truly started the feud, and he had court documents to back that up. So the story was overall great. It wasn't too hard to listen to. I actually enjoyed learning new things about the Hatfields and McCoys that I've never considered before. And Rice does a good job at maintaining accuracy and prefacing different statements by stating that it may be alleged or rumor rather than fact. He also did good to distinguish if something came from court document or public record. So there were different times where he would say, this came from an Appalachian Mountain woman, or this came from a court document, this came from Governor Buckner or something like that. So overall, he does a good job to distinguish fact from fiction, and he kind of cross-references it. So for the lesson plan portion, I would build a lesson plan that, I plan to build a lesson plan around the impact of the Civil War and what the animosity of it can lead to. In this particular case, it led to one of the biggest feuds to ever exist. And I would be sure to align it with Alabama standards, of course, by integrating different impacts that occurred in the state of Alabama while modeling the Hatfields and McCoys as an example of the different impacts of the Civil War. And I would have students do a research project where they would compare and contrast the Hatfields and McCoys feud to any incident of their choice that is based on an impact in Alabama history involving the Civil War, because just about every single state in the United States has some form of impact from the Civil War, and different incidents and tragedies, etc. This could be group work or single. However, I feel that in this case, it would be best if it was group work, because research is very extensive for the Civil War, especially something like the Hatfields and McCoys, which is why I think that this book would be also great to integrate in this lesson plan, taking different passages from that as he uses court documents and public record, which I really like. So that really helps the students to distinguish fact from fiction. And I'm losing my place. Let me see. I would plan to utilize this lesson plan for 4th grade, because that is the grade level in at least the state of Alabama that discusses the Civil War. And now for 3 strategies that I would use and why I would use these, and I will plan to use these, is scaffolding with guided questions to create group discourse. And then this could be a turn and talk. So in the beginning of introducing this content, I would give students guiding questions, kind of to get their juices flowing and get their thinking going, to create productive group discourse. And I could also include a passage and then give guiding questions based on that, and then do a turn and talk, and then turn back to me and tell me what they've gathered. And then I would also use a graphic organizer in 2 instances. This is for strategy 2 and 3. A graphic organizer that aligns with the making sense strategy, um, based on the different key points that led to the 1888 New Year's Day massacre. The reason I would use the making sense strategy framework is because it is clear to navigate, it's more organized in a manner that students can understand. And then for the last component, I would then use a different graphic organizer to compare and contrast the impact of the Civil War in Alabama versus the impact for the Hatfields and McCoys, which I think it's really important to kind of recognize the impact of such a big, pivotal part of the main impacts of the Civil War to something that is important to our state, as Alabama history is a big part of elementary social studies for the state of Alabama. Just your state history is important to know in your elementary level. So it would be good for them to be able to compare and contrast the impacts for Alabama versus Alabama Civil War impacts and Civil War impacts in general, like the Hatfields and McCoys. And I believe using these strategies would help my students to complete the official project where they would be able to compare and contrast overall impacts in Alabama post-Civil War and the impacts of the Hatfield and McCoy family. So that was my book review. I know I rambled a lot, but I genuinely enjoyed this book, and I'm a bit of a history buff, so this is my element. So thank you for listening. I definitely would recommend that everyone should read this. It was truly, and there were many different options I saw for Hatfield and McCoy, and I did my own research out of the way, and I truly found this book to be top tier to use. So that's my book review. Thank you.